The White House yesterday released a document explaining their reasons for why President Donald Trump fired FBI Director Comey. The reason given for why Comey was fired comes from a memo by Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, the number 2 guy at the Department of Justice. The reason given for Comey's firing was how he handled the investigation of the Hillary Clinton emails. Specifically, it was broken down into 2 points. First, that Comey was wrong to announce during a July 5th press conference that in regards to the matter of Hillary Clinton's emails,
our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case.
Rosenstein said it was not the FBI's place to make a statement like that publicly, and by doing so, he usurped the Attorney General's authority. That Comey should have only stated that he had finished the investigation and had given their information over to the Department of Justice. You see, the Department of Justice, headed by the Attorney General, makes a decision whether or not to criminally prosecute someone, not the FBI. The same way locally, the police will gather evidence and conduct an investigation, but it's up to the state's Attorney General's office whether or not the state will press charges on someone, not the police. The second point they made is that Comey sent a letter to Congress on October 28th. Just days before the election, explaining that they were reopening the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails, and that this too was something that should not have been done. Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, wrote a single paragraph basically saying, "I agree with this." And President Trump wrote a short letter basically saying, "I agree with this," and
"You're fired."
Now let's explore the reasons given for Comey being fired. Notice how they were trying to appeal to both Republicans and Democrats. Republicans don't like that Comey said Hillary shouldn't be prosecuted, and Democrats don't like that he sent the letter right before the election, many blaming him personally for Hillary losing the election. Now the first reason given, that Comey should not have said Hillary shouldn't be prosecuted, strikes me as rather weak. Now remember, the reasoning the White House gave isn't that Comey didn't want to press charges against Hillary. It was that he publicly said the FBI recommends the Justice Department doesn't press charges. While it is true that normally these sorts of things are not publicly stated, there was a reason for why Comey did this. Look at how Comey opened the press conference in question.
I'm here to give you an update on the FBI's investigation of Secretary Clinton's use of a personal email system during her time as Secretary of State. After a tremendous amount of work over the last year, the FBI is completing its investigation and referring the matter to the Department of Justice for a prosecutive decision. What I want to do today is 3 things. I want to tell you what we did, I want to tell you what we found, and I want to tell you what we're recommending to the Department of Justice. This is going to be an unusual statement in at least a couple of ways. First, I'm going to include more detail about our process than I ordinarily would, because I think the American people deserve those details in a case of intense public interest. And second, I have not coordinated this statement or reviewed it in any way with the Department of Justice or any other part of the government. They do not know what I'm about to say.
So why did Comey make this all public? You may remember last year that Bill Clinton had a rather shady meeting with Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General in charge of the investigation into Hillary Clinton. Now, Bill and Loretta both said that they just talked about their grandkids. But come on, who really believes that? Regardless, the optics of Bill Clinton having a secret meeting with the person investigating his wife is obviously not good, and many people at the time were pointing to this as a sign of corruption, including Trump.
I think it's so terrible. I think it's so horrible. I think it's the biggest story, one of the big stories of this week, of this month, of this year. You know, I've been talking about the rigged system, how it's rigged. You know, this is terrible, and nobody can understand why nothing's happened.
Now, while Loretta Lynch did not recuse herself from the investigation, she did specifically say she would accept the determination and findings of the attorneys who were working at the Attorney General's office before she was appointed to the position, and the FBI. Because of this meeting, Comey said he believed the investigation needed to not only be transparent to the public, but also shown to be visibly independent from the Department of Justice. Which is why he specifically said,
I have not coordinated this statement or reviewed it in any way with the Department of Justice or any other part of the government. They do not know what I'm about to say.
So that, combined with Loretta Lynch publicly saying she would defer to the FBI, plus Comey saying,
"In our system, the prosecutors make the decisions about whether charges are appropriate based on evidence that the FBI helps collect. Although we don't normally make public our recommendations to the prosecutors, we frequently make recommendations and engage in productive conversations with prosecutors about what resolution may be appropriate given the evidence. In this case, given the importance of the matter, I think unusual transparency is in order."
It seems rather weak to me for Rosenstein to claim Comey supplanted federal prosecutors and assumed command of the Justice Department. So let's look at the second reason. The letter sent to Congress on October 28th. Now you can make your own judgments about whether you believe this was the right thing to do or not, and I'm sure that mostly depends on who you wanted to win the election. However, I think we can all agree that this was included to give the Trump administration cover from the Democrats. Because during the campaign, Trump actually praised Comey doing this.
And I have to give the FBI credit. That was so bad what happened originally, and it took guts for Director Comey to make the move that he made in light of the kind of opposition he had where they're trying to protect her from criminal prosecution. You know that. It took a lot of guts. I really disagreed with him. I was not his fan, but I'll tell you what he did, he brought back his reputation. He brought it back. He's got to hang tough because there's a lot of people want him to do the wrong thing. What he did was the right thing.
The White House today said in response to people pointing this out,
I think you're looking at two very different positions. The president was wearing a different hat at that time. He was a candidate, not the president. Those circumstances certainly change when you become the president.
Which sounds like a lot of BS. But perhaps the biggest reason for the White House's rationale for firing Comey seeming weak to me is the question of why now. The reasons they gave were all things that happened before the election. Why didn't Trump fire Comey immediately if these things concerned him? It would have definitely seemed less self-serving if he had fired him then. And the White House's explanation of this makes little sense.
I think one of the big catalysts that we saw was last week on Wednesday. Director Comey made a pretty startling revelation that he had essentially taken a stick of dynamite and thrown it into the Department of Justice by going around the chain of command when he decided to take steps without talking to the Attorney General or the Deputy Attorney General when holding a press conference and telling them that he would not let them know what he was going to say.
We already knew that, didn't we, Sarah? I mean, we already knew what Mr. Comey had done.
I think that this was, my understanding is Wednesday was the first time the director had openly and publicly made that statement and made that clear.
At Comey's hearing last week, no new information was given regarding the handling of the Clinton email investigation. Plus, they said,
no, the president had lost, again, like I said, he'd lost confidence in Director Comey, and frankly, he'd been considering letting Director Comey go since the day he was elected, but he did have a conversation with the Deputy Attorney General on Monday where they had come to him to express their concerns. The president asked that they put those concerns and their recommendation in writing, which is the letter that you guys have received.
So it is the White House's assertion that Rod Rosenstein decided on his own, after being confirmed, to review Comey's performance?
Absolutely, and I think
previously talked to Attorney General Sessions or Deputy Attorney Rosenstein about the possibility of going this way with Comey?
not that I'm aware of, no.
So they're claiming that both Trump and Rosenstein didn't like Comey from the beginning, came to this conclusion completely separate from each other, yet never talked about it until this last Monday, and that Trump decided to fire the head of the FBI, spending only a single day thinking about it. Perhaps that would explain why they were so surprised by the backlash, something I assume most people would have obviously predicted. So, what exactly is the White House's strategy here? Regardless of whether you support Trump or not, I don't think anyone would disagree. This definitely looks bad for the White House, or at the very least, gives the Democrats tons of ammunition to use against Trump. Democrats are now all clamoring for an independent special investigator to oversee the Russian investigation, and there's going to be a huge pushback for whoever Trump nominates to be the new FBI director, unless he is squeaky clean. and not just from the Democrats. The Republican in charge of the Senate's investigation into all the Russian stuff, Senator Richard Burr, said, "I am troubled by the timing and reasoning of Director Comey's termination. His dismissal further confused an already difficult investigation. His dismissal, I believe, is a loss for the Bureau and the nation." It's hard for me to see how this will help the White House in any way, and harder still to believe the reasons they gave for firing Comey. Lastly, let me leave you with 4 other related points. FBI directors have 10-year terms. The only other president to fire an FBI director was Bill Clinton in 1993. And he was fired because the Justice Department found out that he was using federal taxpayers' money for personal reasons. 2. If you hear people in the media saying, hyperbolically, the Tuesday Massacre, they are referencing the Saturday Night Massacre. They're referring to how President Nixon, on a Saturday, ordered his Attorney General to fire the special prosecutor looking into the Watergate break-in. The Attorney General refused to do so and was fired/resigned. Nixon then ordered the Deputy Attorney General, who was now in charge, to fire the special prosecutor. He refused. He too was fired/resigned. The third guy in charge, Robert Bork, finally agreed to fire the special prosecutor. This is what led to the start of the impeachment proceedings. Robert Bork was later rewarded for his efforts by Ronald Reagan, nominating him to the Supreme Court. Obviously, he was not approved by the Senate, not only for the above-mentioned, but also for publicly being against this little thing you may have heard of, called the Civil Rights Act. Though personally, I find it hyperbolic to compare the two incidents the way the media is doing right now. Third, the Trump administration notified the press that Comey was fired before they even notified Comey himself. In fact, Comey was in Los Angeles at the time, speaking to the local FBI branch, where he saw a TV in the background, announcing on the news that he was fired. At first he believed it was just a prank.
Bet you didn't see that one coming, huh?
Sadly for Comey, it could only be classified as a prank the way Daddy of 5 classifies child abuse.
It's just a prank.
So you all made me go through all this just for a stupid prank?
Yeah. Ha! Got him!
Lastly, many people are pointing at how Jeff Sessions not only recused himself from the Russia investigation, but the Clinton email investigation as well. Thus, he shouldn't have had anything to do with the firing of Director Comey. This is probably why it was the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, that the White House attributes the reasoning for firing Comey. Anyways, hope that cleared some stuff up for you. Let me know if you like this style of video. I was actually working on doing a similar one for the Yates-Clapper hearings when all this news broke. So until the next time.
Come to the right place, because I want to fucking kill myself as well.